Hello, and welcome to Mental Health Matters. I'm your host, Liz Lang. Each week on this podcast, we will break down various aspects of mental health. We are so excited you're here and hope you enjoy this week's episode. Hey guys, Liz Lang here with Jeremiah and Selina from Core Connection. And this week we are going to get into loving the teen you have. And before we do that, I have this week's parenting moment. So mental health is something that we talk a lot about in our family, as you can imagine. And lately, my oldest has been pretty into it and, really just wanting to be an advocate for other people and to really just help other people and kind of almost, she wants to be a safe person for people struggling with mental health. And so she asked for some stickers, like those water bottle stickers, like those are all the rage. And I'm like, well, yeah, I'll buy you some stickers. Sure. Well, I think I bought her 100 of them and she needs more because she's given them all out. So now she needs more, which I'm like, yeah, this is something I can 100% get on board with. I love the idea of destigmatizing mental health and making it okay for people to not be okay and to need help. So one thing that she did that I absolutely loved. So she found out that a good friend of mine is struggling with mental health. And she immediately was like, I have to pick out stickers just for this individual. And and so she immediately wanted to just jump in, and it was an adult. And so, it was kind of this interesting idea of, yeah, hey, even adults have struggles. From a teen's perspective, sometimes they think, man, these adults have got it all figured out and they don't have any of these big struggles that I do as teens. So I think it was probably a good instance for her to see, like, yeah, adults have struggles too.
That's awesome.
Yeah, I think it's great for her to start to learn that and understand that adult struggles are different than teenage struggles often, but they're still struggles and it's difficult and we experience hard things too. So great job. I think that's awesome.
Yeah.
Which is interesting because in turn, she's only helping herself, her own mental health by serving and helping other people and thinking of them.
So true.
Yeah. It's a good cycle to be in. So, all right. Letting go of expectations and loving what is. I think when we have this new perfect little baby, we kind of create this perfect future for them, or we at least come up with the vision, and we can't help but thinking of what their life is going to be like and who they're going to grow up to be. And it's really exciting. And, it's great to have things to look forward to and to watch them grow and watch them develop. And then they actually do grow up and develop. And maybe there's a gap between expectation and reality. So tell me your guys' thoughts on this. And I know you've had experiences with this, right? I mean, you've got a couple of teenagers now. So, tell me what you've experienced here.
So it's what I call the manual. We have a manual of what we think a teenager is or isn't, or what they should do or shouldn't do. And so we have a story or a manual about our teenager, or really actually everybody in our life. We have a story or a manual for them. And so when that story doesn't play out to what we think it should be, so sometimes that will end up causing tension in the relationship between the two of you, that you have the story for them of what their life should be.
Yeah, and so often that story is just an idea of what we think. It's not accurate. It's not what they want. And sometimes we see it play out sometimes in the lives of teenagers where maybe we almost want to live vicariously through their life. Maybe dad didn't play football and he wants his son to play football. And so he pushes and pushes and pushes it. Or, maybe mom wants the daughter to do something specific and has this vision. And usually our child's vision of their own future and our vision of their future are not the same thing. And I think that's really what the essence of what this podcast is about today. And coming to this place where we understand that our kids have their own lives to live and their own goals and dreams and desires. And learning how to support them in that, especially when it looks different than what we wanted, can be really difficult. I certainly didn't have a vision of what some of my children are doing today. I had a bigger vision or a different vision. And it takes time to kind of come to terms with that and learn to accept that and love them for who they are and what they want to do instead of what we think they should do.
So here's my personal experience with having to learn this. Our oldest son, to me, sports is what boys did. I didn't know what other options there were for boys. I really don't feel like there is still much other options besides sports for boys. And so we put him in sports and he did not like it. And he was probably up until he was about 11. And he finally was like, can we just all admit that I'm just not good at this? And so I was just really struggling, like, okay, but what then? Because that's all I know for boys is sports. And so I had to learn a new world and new ideas, new things that were important to him or things that he excelled at or things that he was interested in. Luckily, robotics has become more of a bigger thing. I feel like, at least in my world, that's become a bigger known thing. And so he started into robotics and trying to succeed and trying to make a life of sports, I guess, per se, in the world of robotics. And it was great for him. And he had different interests. And so for me to be able to grasp and understand and support him in those things that were important to him, it started opening up my eyes and helping me to realize that, I might have this idea of what I think he should do or what he should be involved in, but where does that come from? Where did I get that idea from? And that there could actually be other options or other paths for him to take.
Yeah, I think that's a perfect example. And, it is so important for teens to be involved in extracurricular activities, whatever it looks like, whatever their interests are. And I can totally sympathize with that. When we started having kids, Curtis and I were always like, we want our kids active. We want active kids. We want our kids to do sports. We kind of went through the same thing. Our oldest does not like sports. And that's okay. There's other really great and wonderful things that she does like. And, I appreciate that you were able to let go of your expectation and explore with him and be open to trying new things because it can be exciting. And I believe you shared before about him being really into lightsabers and, how fun that was for you to learn something new about him and to learn a new interest. It can be a really cool thing if you let it. It can actually be exciting, really exciting to let your teen go out and explore and find out what they're good at. And you know what? You're going to love watching them shine.
Well, he started a lightsaber club at his school that went from high school to middle school because it was so popular. So,
yeah.
See, I think I have it figured out of what I think he should have done, but he actually created and did something even better.
Well, I think the idea here is that we give our children the opportunity to explore different things that they're interested in. And this allows them to become who they want to be. It allows them to see other opportunities in the world. I think that sometimes as parents, we get a little bit narrow-minded and we think, well, you're my son, you need to go play football, or, you need to go dance because you're a girl. And that's wonderful for those who want to dance and those who want to play football. But not every kid wants to do that. And not every kid wants to do things that you might be interested in as a parent. If you would have asked me in my early 20s what I thought about ballet, I would have told you that sounds like torture. Like I don't want to watch ballet. I don't want to go and sit and watch, girls in tutus dance around on a stage. That sounds terrible. Yet, I have a daughter who just loved ballet and was really incredible at it. And I find myself today just with a deep desire to watch her dance in ballet again. And, she's an adult and she has her own children, and dancing, in the Nutcracker is just not something she does now. And that's okay. But I would have never envisioned that as a parent. Yet it's something that we gave her the opportunity to explore, and she was really, really good at it. And it was such an enriching time for us to be able to watch her and to see her grow and develop and to work on that skill. And she worked very hard on it. That's just one simple example. It's just not something else I saw. Maybe Selena did, but I like ballet sounds terrible as a man to me. Some men may enjoy that, and that's great too. But again, I think that the point here is that when we provide opportunities for children to explore what they like and what they want, and we stop closing off the opportunities with our own narrow opinions and our manual of what we think they should do, sometimes we're going to be pretty amazed at what they come up with and what they produce as our own children.
And I think it's also important too to be clear that acceptance and letting them explore does not mean removing boundaries, right? So, if your kid is aspiring to be a high school dropout living in mom's basement in their 30s, it's okay to not support that choice, right? I also want to say there are thousands of different life paths that people take. And you know what? If you do have a 30-year-old child living in your basement, I would imagine there's a pretty darn good reason why they're there, right? But, it's okay to still set boundaries and expectations. That's not what this is about. This isn't about just, oh, I'm going to go, let them do whatever, especially, good heavens, if it's dangerous. Okay. Like if they want to be a professional skydiver and you're really, really uncomfortable with them being a professional skydiver because it seems too dangerous, as a minor, you have that right to put your foot down and say no. And these are extreme examples, I realize, but it is important to acknowledge and to realize that teens do need expectations and boundaries.
Absolutely. It's not taking away those expectations and boundaries. It's just in your mind and the idea and the story that you have of what you think their life should be and how they should do it. I think that connection grows when we shift from who I hope they'd be to who they actually are. So getting to know them, getting to know what they enjoy, and supporting that and building that relationship on who they actually are.
I think that if we allow them to be who they actually are and we support that, I think we would be really amazed at what they can produce and do and become as human beings. I have to wonder how often we kind of stifle the growth of our children by trying to force them into this manual that Selena was talking about and these expectations like, oh, you're a teenage boy, you have to play sports. Well, what else might they do? What else might they accomplish? What else are they interested in exploring? We have a little boy in our home that is just absorbing everything in the world right now. And he is so interested in so many different things. And I find myself often like, oh, I better be careful what I say because I don't want to shoot down his ideas and his thoughts about some of these things that he's exploring, even though some of it's may be kind of unrealistic. Or even though I might be scared about some of these things, he talks about wanting to be an astronaut and go to outer space. And I'm like, no, I don't want you to go to outer space. Do you know how many people die trying to go to outer space? Like this happens all the time. And I remember wanting to be an astronaut myself as a young boy, but instead I just have to bite my tongue and support it, even though maybe I didn't see him going that direction or this direction. And he's very young and he's got a lot of things to figure out still. But I worry that as parents, we often stifle their growth and development because we start shooting down things because it doesn't fit into this idea of what we see for them. And when we do that, we stifle their growth, we stifle their creativity, and we don't want to do that. We want to see what they can do and what they can build and what they can become. And the only way to do that is to encourage that exploration of good things. And some of it might be scary. And I would argue that if your kid wants to be a skydiver, a professional skydiver, well, I would argue about shutting that down. You have the right to as a parent, but when they become an adult, they're going to be able to make whatever choices they want. And I get the fear there, like exploring different ideas and things and ways of being and career paths, potential career paths with them. That could be a really fun thing for them. And we just maybe need to get out of the way sometimes as parents.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I got an example I think maybe all of us could relate to. If your teenager says, I don't think I want to go to college right away,
Mm-hmm.
how are we going to react?
Ooh, that is such a good one.
It is. And I say that what we need to look at is we need to understand the why don't I want to go to college right away, right? Like if I feel like I've got this great job, down at the local hardware store and I really love, stocking the shelves and they're paying me really good money because it feels like really good money when I'm 17 years old, I'm just going to work there and live at home. Maybe that's a different type of conversation, but
yeah.
If you say, well, I don't think I want to go to college. Well, what do you want to do? Let's explore that. What does that look like?
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm really interested in this one thing and I want to go and explore this and I want to spend some time with it and see if this is a direction I want to go in my life. Oh, okay. Well, let's support that then. I think that we get too caught up in every kid's got to go to college. They don't need to. That's just not real. It's not true.
Mm-hmm.
I've got lots of friends that make a lot more money than I do that didn't go to college, and they are very successful and have happy, fulfilling lives. And so college isn't everything.
But that's something you've had to learn, and that's something you've had to adjust in your thinking, right? So it's very typical for kids to be asked in, senior in high school, what are you doing after high school? And so you've come to the point that you're able to realize and understand that college isn't for everybody. But to help other parents, that's where you can start questioning or be curious or understanding, like, why do I think that college is the best choice? Mm-hmm. That's a good question to ask yourself. Why do I think that this is the only path for them? Could there be other options or opportunities for my child? Because sometimes that is a family expectation that you go to college and you get a degree. And so if you're saying things like, oh, that's not a good idea, that's going to portray to your child that what you're wanting to do, you're not doing what I expect you to do. I don't think you're making the right choice by exploring other options. I think just in your own mind to help build that connection would be questions like, oh, well, help me understand, or what is your plan, or what interests you? So you can be open to other ideas and opportunities that could be there for your child.
Well, that's that piece of curiosity that Selina and I talk often about. Get curious about it. Oh, what's helping you make that decision? What direction are you hoping to go? Help me understand, like Selina's saying, like, what are we doing? What do you want to do? This could be really exciting, right? But when we think that it has to be a certain way as parents, it really kind of drives our kids into a wedge and into a place where there's not a lot of room for growth and exploration.
Well, if you're thinking that college is what, successful high school graduates do, then there could be some embarrassment that comes with that when you're explaining to other people, like, oh, what is so-and-so doing? And you feel like, some embarrassment because they're not going to college or something like that, because in our minds, we think that the expectation for everybody is that they go to college. So I think just making that clear in your own mind and understanding that there's lots of different opportunities and different paths for our kids, and not one's right or wrong.
Yeah. So I think really it's about momentum, right? It's about having a plan. And I think that's mostly what we're looking for our teens, is that they have a plan. You don't want to go to college? Okay. Well, what do you want to do? Let's figure this out. It's not just, I think I'm just going to sit here and live rent free at home. Okay, well, that's maybe, like Jeremiah said, a different conversation, because that's maybe not going to work. Like it's we want them to have some sort of momentum, goals, plans. Maybe if they are happy working at the hardware store or whatever job it is, and they feel like they are making decent money, and they say, hey, I've got this plan, I'm going to for advancement, and I've got like this career path lined out for me, and they started at 18 right out of high school or just before high school, great. Okay. And you may be looking at it and thinking, huh, that's not going to work. But if we can just step back and let them take that chance and let them take that leap of faith, if it's possible. I understand it may not be feasible, right? For whatever reason. But if you can let them figure out that career choice, if you can let them learn maybe a few months down the road, or a year or so down the road, if it's possible to let them make that choice, I think you would be very pleasantly surprised at what your teen can accomplish and the growth that will happen in that.
And let's not make any mistake about it. There's nothing wrong if your kid wants to work at the local hardware store the rest of their life. That if that's the decision they want to make, then that's the decision they get to make. And I think the key here is, at least one of the big keys for me, is what are we communicating to our child in the way we respond and act towards their life decisions and the person that they're becoming and the choices that they're making. Of course, outside of doing horrible things, we're just talking about natural, normal, everyday choices and decisions. This is something that's kind of dear to my heart because I worry a lot about it, especially in highly religious like families like ours is, and Liz, I know yours is as well. Sometimes the way we communicate things, if our child decides that they don't want to be a part of the church that we go to, or they don't want to be a part of the lifestyle that we live, if we're not careful about how we communicate it, what we start to tell them is that our love is based on you making certain types of decisions. And if you don't make those decisions, then you won't be loved by us. And that is not what we want to do. That's the thing that worries me a lot about children becoming something other than what their parents expected. Our children should be loved because they're our children, period. The end. Regardless of what lifestyles they choose and choices they make. Of course, there are certain things that we want for our children. We want them to be happy. I want all of my children to have a fulfilling marriage relationship with a partner who brings them great joy. I want them to have children because of the joy that brings me having my own children. Like, I want them to experience those things. I want my children to be a part of the religion that I'm a part of because I've found great joy and satisfaction and hope within that religion. But the reality is sometimes they don't choose that. And it's okay. I still love them just the same. My love isn't diminished for them because they choose something different. And I think that's a big piece of what we're talking about here, is learning to communicate with them in a way that helps them to feel loved and appreciated and respected, no matter what path they choose. If you want to choose to be, the guy working at the hardware store, great. If you can have a life that fulfills you and that's what you want to do, then why can't we support that as parents? Even though we might see something bigger and better for them, at a certain point, it's really not up to us anymore.
Yep. Yeah, I really appreciate what you said about religion and bringing that piece up, because at some point your teen is going to have to figure out for themselves whether or not they actually believe. You can never force your teen to believe something. And so it's so natural for them to question. And I think as parents, when we've raised them to be a certain way, it can freak us out and we can think, oh no, all of my perfect plans for my child are being derailed. Take a step back, take a pause, and let them explore. And they may very well choose not to follow in your footsteps. They may choose not to follow that religion. And so, I think what Jeremiah said there is key. That doesn't change your love for them. They are still just as valuable to you because they are a human being with infinite value. And you still, like, your relationship is still just as cherished. And I will say, particularly, when they become an adult, there might be some bumps. I would expect some bumps as you guys are figuring it out and maybe re-navigating some of those boundaries. But it is possible, and it's okay to struggle. It's okay to, maybe you're going to offend one another occasionally, or maybe, you guys are going to get frustrated over something. It's all part of the learning process. But, be prepared for that, but don't let it be the end of the story.
Right. there might come a time that you will have to step back and ask the question, what do I care more about, this expectation I have or the relationship I have with my child?
Mm-hmm. It's a great question.
Yeah. Do I care more that they didn't go to college or about our relationship? Do I care more that maybe they're not reaching their potential? And that's a hard thing for us as parents, right? Because we can sometimes see the potential in our children, and sometimes we see more potential than exists in our children, just because we're parents and that's what we do. But what's more important? I love that Selina said that. I think that's such a perfect way to look at things. Do I care more about my relationship with them, or about what they did or didn't do or accomplish, or what they're a part of or they're not a part of? They get to make those choices.
Mm-hmm.
We all have this thing we call agency. We all get to choose. And that includes our children. They get to choose. And we don't get to dictate all the things that they do, nor should we. I don't think it's a good idea, even if we could.
Okay, so here's another good example. Your kid tries a sport, and midway through the season, they're like, man, I'm terrible at this. I don't want to do this anymore. And they just want to cold turkey quit. What do we do?
Well, I think there's so many factors that can play into that. So you as a parent have got to decide
Right.
what's going to be better and less damaging, I guess, in the long run, or actually just make a choice, and you're not always going to get it right. But
Yeah.
I would probably tend to say, if I kind of made a general, I would say, I guess, finding out the reasons why they don't. But then I would probably encourage them to continue it and finish it out and see what we can learn from this situation.
And there may be occasions where we need to allow them to end it,
Sure.
because we could cause more damage than we do good. That's such a hard situation. Before I gave any parent advice on that, I'd want to walk through it with them and understand kind of the ins and outs of the situation and kind of go from there. But in general, it's a good idea for us to finish things that we start, right? Especially if we're on like a team sport where a team is counting on us to be there or something. We don't want teams that end up having to forfeit games because our kid is like, nah, I'm not interested, so I'm not going to go. Well, maybe that's not the best choice here. There's something to be said about teaching our children to follow through with commitments and things that they've given. But there may be times where it's just more damaging than it is good. So
Sure. Like if, for instance, if there's bullying going on and it's like, and if it's not being addressed, or if there is ever a concern of safety, you pull your kid and, well, the team will have to just figure something out if they're depending on your kid, right? But if there's ever a concern of safety, without hesitation, you pull them. But yeah, and I can definitely see some instances where it would do, more harm than good. But yeah, I think in general, I think it is a really good opportunity to teach our kids about commitments and how important it is to honor those commitments. And you can even say, yeah, I get that you don't like it, finish out this season, you don't ever have to go back to it again. And make that clear expectation. But yeah, if it's possible and if it's feasible and if it's safe, then I think it's a good opportunity, again, of letting them explore, but still keeping boundaries and some expectations in place.
Definitely.
Okay, let's get into maybe some personality differences, right? So, for example, I am an extrovert, right? Like through and through extrovert. I thrive on being social. And it could be really easy for me to wonder what's wrong with my kid if they're not as social as I am. So sometimes we can get into this comparison problem with teens or with kids. So walk me through why that's going to be problematic if I'm concerned that my daughter isn't as social as I think she should be or as I am.
I love that you brought this up because this is something I still am trying to figure out and still learn. Because same, I feel better when I talk to other people, and I like to go and talk and hang out with people. And it really hasn't been until probably recently that I'm starting to understand that it's not that way for everybody. Like I cannot grasp it in my mind how not only my children, but I have friends that I'm just like, oh, if we just go out and we just hang out, like, I think that's going to solve their problems and they're going to
Uh-huh.
feel better. So that's always my answer is, oh, let's hang out, let's do something. But I've had to learn that people are different and that really is not helpful for them. That would not solve their problems. That wouldn't make them feel better and make them feel worse, right? And so, again, trying to understand that with our kids, that like it's hard when like you're a social person, you like to do that, but then your kids don't like to do that. So we
Mm-hmm.
think, oh, but if they just go out, then they're going to feel better and this is going to be so great for them and they're going to feel good. So I think just deciphering in your mind and understanding that people get their buckets filled, their needs filled in different ways. And there's not a right or wrong. And so that might be for you, that might fill your bucket, but understanding that your kid, that might actually be a lot harder and not fill their bucket, and that wouldn't be helpful for them.
This is something that Selina and I have grappled with throughout our marriage, because Selina is very outgoing, very much an extrovert, and she married an introvert. So
Mm-hmm.
it's challenging sometimes because we just see things a little bit differently. And it took me a long time to really understand this. And maybe for some of our listeners, this explanation might help a little bit, because when we start to understand the way people function and the way they work, sometimes it's easier for us to see things and to be a little bit more compassionate. So especially when it comes to things like introvert and extrovert, the world tends to think that, oh, well, you're an introvert, so you don't want to go out, you don't want to do things, you don't want to be social, you just want to stay at home and read a book or whatever. And that's
Mm-hmm.
actually not an accurate description
Nope.
of the two. So if we look at this, if we take an introvert actually wants to go to the party too. The difference between an introvert and an extrovert is this: the introvert goes to the party with their batteries fully charged and comes home with them completely drained, needs alone time or one-on-one time with very, very select people in order to recharge those batteries and get back to an even base. An extrovert goes to the party with their batteries drained and comes home with them fully charged. And they thrive on that. They grow on that. They absorb that energy. And so they both enjoy the party. They just enjoy it from a different perspective. And so if you have a child who is like, no, I don't want to go out, I just want to go in my room and read a book,
Mm-hmm.
that's okay. That might be how they charge their batteries. And I know that's a super like simplified explanation of it, but that's the basis of it, right? And everybody has different levels of introversion and extroversion, and there's
Yeah.
some nuances there with some of that. But it's important for us as parents to understand that, hey, like for me, I would just assume stay home and work on a project at home or do something with my family. A one-on-one date like with my wife is perfect for me. But your kid might be just drowning because they haven't got out and been in a social setting. We saw this really big with COVID and what
Mm-hmm.
happened, right? Like where we were all kind of locked down. For those who are introverts, like for a lot of us, it was like kind of nice. But for those who needed that social interaction to charge their batteries,
We were not
it,
okay.
no, it was really, really difficult.
It was.
And
It was
and
so
so
hard.
as a parent, being able to see those differences and those nuances in our children, especially like in a home like ours where there's a mixture, right? Some of our kids are more outgoing and some of them are more internal, just like their dad. So being able to see that and respect that and being able to work with that and help them can be super impactful in their lives.
I think to wrap it up, all of it, and to respond to that would be that there isn't a problem here. I
Mm-hmm.
think
Yeah.
a lot of time with our expectation in our relationships, when we're having a hard time, is because we think that there's something wrong, that we
Mm-hmm.
think there's a problem. So if you think there's a problem that your kid doesn't want to go out and hang out and they just want to stay inside and read a book, if your thought is this is wrong or there's a problem, then that's what's going to be affecting your expectation in your relationship with them. So if we can shift that to not thinking, oh, there's a problem here, but again, curious, oh, I wonder how this works for them. I wonder how that fills their battery, because honestly, in my mind, I still can't understand it, but just trying to understand, like, hey, this is different. There's not a wrong or right. There's different ways of doing it. And so for them, this is great. And this is what they need.
I love that you put it that way, Selina. I think that's perfect. And I think you could chase that same idea all the way back through this entire podcast of when our children become something that we didn't expect or aren't reaching their potential or whatever the story might be, it becomes a problem because we make it a problem, not because it actually is a problem. So I love that. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, and then the only caveat that I want to throw in there is if there is a sudden shift, right? Or if your teen is too isolated. Even introverts still need social interaction and they still need human connection. It is a physiological need. So, yeah, let your teen recharge their batteries by reading a book, having alone time, me time, right? Absolutely. But do not let them isolate. There's a big difference here. And I want to make sure that parents understand that there is a distinction there, because teens may not always. And sometimes if they're too isolated, it's because there could be a problem going on. So I just want parents to be aware of that. But other than that, yeah, let your teen recharge how they want to recharge. And, there could also be a problem with an extrovert too. They may be so desperate for that social interaction. Maybe they're going to go to a party and it's not going to be safe for them. But, they're not willing to because they want to go, because they want to be included. They thrive on just being social. There's always things to watch with our kids, right?
Certainly.
Okay, so next week we are going to get into supporting eating disorders, and we will see you all then. Have a question? How about a topic you'd like us to cover? Send us an email at mentalhealthpod21@gmail.com.